Welcome, everyone, to the Best of the Best podcast presented by the Brinks Armored Account. I am your host, Maverick Levy. I have three of the best on today's episode. We're going to be diving into insurance, mostly focusing on personal lines insurance, but I want everyone to go kind of round robin around the room. We'll start with Peter, just so the audience can understand your background, who you are, and what you do. So, Peter, take it away.
Thanks, Maverick. I'm Peter Vitale. I'm the CEO of a company called Lead Clinic. We are digital marketing specialists for insurance agents. So we work within the lead generation ecosystem. I also own an independent insurance agency called Encore Insurance, and am a former Allstate agent as well. That's my brief background.
There you go. Chris, go ahead.
Beautiful. Thanks, Maverick. My name is Chris Lewis. I am an Allstate agent here in Austin, Texas. Been in the industry for about 20 years. Currently the chair of the Allstate Agency Executive Council. We meet with leadership at Allstate to talk about issues agent related. So excited to be on today.
Awesome. And Derrek.
Yeah, Derrek Anduiza. I'm out of Houston, Texas, and been doing insurance for the last 10 years. I also chair the marketing committee for the National Advisory Board, and pretty much helping us pass initiatives that will make us better marketers.
The discussions on this podcast are for informational purposes only. I cannot predict and do not guarantee that you will attain a particular result from the information provided. You should always seek professional assistance before making decisions in connection with the topics discussed. Absolutely. I love that. And I think the first place I want to start for today is really talking about kind of the state of the insurance marketplace for consumers, right? I think in today's world, as you all know, this podcast is aimed and geared for education, entertainment, but our main demographic is 18 to 35. And those people right now just can't get insurance sometimes. It's very challenging to get insurance. And so I guess I'll throw this question to you, Chris, because the way I view your position as the chairman of that council for Allstate, right, are you talking to leadership about what the consumers are feeling when your agents are talking to them, and the ability or non-ability to get insurance?
100%. Yeah. Almost every conversation we have with them is all around the consumer and our customers and making sure their experience is as good as it can be. It is, you're right, it is the craziest market. In my 20 years, especially in Texas, we've had some crazy markets, but I have never seen one like this. You know, on the surface, really just in all industries, we have more options than we've ever had. But the problem in the insurance space right now is those options are dwindling every day. You hear about different carriers. So consumers have fewer choices, and what do fewer choices mean? It means higher prices.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a difficult spot, but it is something, you know, the company is building new products, building new experiences, and they're always doing it from the consumer standpoint to give the consumers what they want.
Yeah. And so with that being said, something you talked about, right, is the consumer shopping always want the lowest price. And I think that's where Peter and I's world really comes into play because, and Peter, I'll let you dive into this, but the advertisements from the publishers that are putting out material saying, hey, you can get auto insurance for $19 a month. And then what happens is the consumer picks up the phone or someone calls them after they submit their information in a form fill. And now the consumer is pissed off saying, hey, I thought I was going to get $19 car insurance. You know, Peter, I'll let you speak to that more.
All right, so let's really dive into that because this is something that, you know, as I entered the lead generation space, this is something I'm really passionate about and something we see a lot of and something that Lead Clinic will be doing something about this very soon. But let's just take a step back and what are we actually talking about, right? So consumers need insurance, right, for a couple reasons. The law mandates them to have auto insurance, and most of the time their mortgage company mandates them to have homeowners insurance. So it's a product that literally everyone needs. And so what do? They go search online, and you don't just see advertisements for Allstate or State Farm or Geico. You see what we call marketplaces, comparison shopping sites, and some people, to drive traffic to those comparative shopping sites, will put stuff like that, $19 auto insurance. You know, I mean, I think I'm pretty smart, but I'm not an insurance actuary. I don't think any of us are. I would tell you that with my knowledge of insurance, I would bet that in a state like Texas or Michigan or New York or California potentially, there's no way in hell that you will get a $19 a month auto insurance or home insurance rate. It is absolutely impossible. And I say that's not as an actuary, but like someone who knows and has sold thousands of insurance policies, right? That doesn't happen. And so why do digital marketers do that? Well, right, they're compensated based on the traffic that they drive to a particular website, and if a consumer fills out that information. And when that happens, right, there's some bad actors that want to drive traffic at any and all costs. I mean, look, frankly, I think we're here to educate consumers. Like, consumers need to understand that, like, if you see something that's too good to be true, it is generally. And if someone is saying, oh, $19 a month auto insurance, that's probably not somewhere you want to like put your personal information in on. But right, it's the economics of it, and it's also the fact that nobody's really policing this well. Now we're going to start, and there'll be more about like what we're going to do to try and prevent this from happening. But I think that to our insurance agents that are undoubtedly going to watch this podcast too, take a look. Take a look at the websites that you go to. Look at the display and native ads on websites that you go to. And when you see stuff like that, click it, figure out whose website it's going to. Oftentimes it's going to, some of the larger, lead generation networks, and, talk to your account rep there. I would even say, and this is something we're going to start encouraging our clients to do, is when you see this stuff, let us know. And we'll do a deep dive into it to see who owns that website, and one, put them on notice that like they're not following truth in advertising laws, and two, that they're probably not following insurance regulations of any of the 50 states, right? They're all regulated differently. They're probably not following those. And maybe we need to start making complaints with regulators as insurance agents. Maybe we need to say, hey, this isn't a good thing for us, right? Because it's a bad consumer experience. It's a horrible thing for the consumer. But instead of just saying, oh, well, we just know that this happens, I think that we actually need to take accountability and do what we can on our end to say, yeah, we're not cool with this. This needs to stop, or I'm going to stop buying leads from you. This needs to stop, or I'm going to report you to a regulator because you are violating the law. And I think that we need to take our statutory obligations seriously as marketers, and we need to work with partners that understand those obligations, because it's a horrible consumer experience.
Yeah, and I'll bring this into an analogy, because I'm going through this right now. There is a shared workspace in Miami that I was looking at, and I went on the website, and it says you can get a workspace for 1 to 4 people. I think it was $869 a month. Reasonable price, right? Make an appointment, go in there. And now I, as the consumer, even furthermore than insurance, have taken time out of my day to now physically go to this location. I get there, I sit down with the guy. What does he tell me? He's like, yeah, this space is actually $5,000 a month. The price online, he's telling me this, the price online is the price because I needed to put together a storage unit for one of our clients. And so the way that the system worked out, that's the price it's showing you. So, and first off, I will say this guy was very salesy, and I hate to be sold like that, right? I hate the used car salesman approach. And so I leave there knowing what I'm going to do, but, knowing, okay, I'm just going to take some time to think about it. So then I call him. I said, hey, Connor, you told me, unfortunately, what had happened, but this is the way the world is. You can't say a price online that's different from what it is in reality, and then to further that, tell me, yeah, you actually put that price in there because you needed to hold it for a storage unit for someone. And so now it's not even, and I think this is where I go back to the $19 a month. Had it said like $4,000 a month, and I walked in and he said $5,000 a month, okay, we're relative, right? It's somewhat close. But the huge discrepancy in price, it doesn't justify like me going there and wasting my time now. So now what am I doing as the consumer? Which, if you're listening to this out there and you have this happens a lot in the car sales world, where they'll price a car online a certain way, and then you go in there and the car's not that price. Hold these people accountable is what I will say, because now, every single day I go on the website, I document it, I go to their other locations, I document that the price is different, and literally yesterday while we were setting up for the conference and eating lunch, I think I called them 3 times again just to say, like, hey, guys, I haven't gotten an answer back from you. I'm not going to stop, right? As a consumer, this is what I should be entitled to, and what you were told to me. Had you told me a different price, I would have never been interested, right? Had you been honest and transparent, I think is the best way to put it. And so, Derrek, I'll throw this ball into your court as someone that's, the chairman of the marketing committee for Allstate. And I know that's 2 different worlds, right? I think it's also important before you talk for the consumers to understand that you see Allstate advertisements, but in my opinion, you will never see an advertisement coming from the internal Allstate marketing team saying $19 car insurance.
Ever. No, I think to start a relationship on the right foot is always where we want to be. I think consumer trust, once you lose it, you're harming the brand. So at the top level, we're promoting value, and everybody, in this economy is feeling the pinch right now. So the best thing that we can do is we need to be transparent, honest up front. We need to think relationship side on the for our producers, for our people that are working with the consumers, and think, hey, let me build this relationship. Let's have an honest discussion. Let me get to know you as a person. And we spend our time there. We want our people actually thinking of it as a first date. What are you going to say to get this second date? How interested in this person are you going to be? Are you going to be the person that goes on the date and talks about themselves? You're probably not going to get another date, right? Yeah. So we want to be consumer focused, but really even deeper than that. We want to create that relationship right off the bat and get to know that person. And I really feel like that is where you create that trusted advisor. You create somebody that you want to do business. We all do business with our friends. We don't want to do business with our sales folks.
Yeah. And Peter, I will say, do you want to give them some examples of clients telling us this is a bad lead?
Yeah.
When really it's a good lead. It's an intent consumer, but the salesperson just isn't doing their job correctly.
Yeah. So we see this a lot. Like, it's funny because, when we started this business, we started it to really, I started to be a better lead buyer for our own agency, and now we really don't even operate that business anymore, and we do focus completely on lead gen. But we do this in a consultative approach with our clients, and so we review client phone calls, we help them and try and train up their sales team. But I will say one example that I always get is we'll have someone who says, I'm buying home insurance leads, and they need to have, excellent credit or they have bad credit, and we don't want those folks. And I would say that, when we've analyzed a ton of data, we've seen that, the agents that we work with, it doesn't matter what the credit score is of the consumer that they're working with, right? The competitive position on a homeowner's insurance lead is really good relative to the competitors, regardless of the person's credit. But, we'll see someone that I guess to answer your question more directly, we'll see someone who's just say the person isn't interested. They said they didn't want a quote, or they didn't request a quote. Well, oftentimes that is you just have to understand the consumer didn't understand they were going to get a phone call, and maybe that's it. Maybe you need to overcome that objection. Maybe they just don't have time to talk to you right now, and I would say that that's probably our biggest. You have to level set with the consumer that you probably expected to get a price online. Mm-hmm. That isn't the way most of the insurance world works. And even carriers that have a more robust digital ecosystem, sometimes, right, when they're not achieving profitability targets in certain regions, they make that distribution channel harder for a consumer to transact business because they're losing money on this segment of business. So, if you operate a grocery store and you lost money on every person that walked through the door, right? Would you want more people to walk in the door? No, you want less, right? Same with an insurance carrier. So they can modify their distribution strategy this way. So when consumers go to a website, they think they're going to get an Amazon experience. Well, that rarely happens. And so the agents that we work with and their producers that work for them, right? We coach them to understand that the consumer may not have expected a phone call. Mm-hmm. And that is probably you're just calling it a bad time, right?
Yeah.
And move on from that and, have a conversation. Okay. And just be honest. You probably didn't expect to receive a phone call, but this is I'm here to help you get insurance now. So I understand that now's probably not a great time based on what you're telling me. So when would be a better time to call you, right? And a lot of the insurance agents we work with, right, have traditional office hours, but the very best insurance agents that we work with, right, have longer office hours, right, to accommodate consumers when they're not working.
Yeah.
So I think that's just setting proper expectations, probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I think that brings me to the point of the consumer experience, something we've talked a lot about. And Chris, I want to ask you, from someone in your position that's an agency owner that's talking to the executive team at Allstate, I don't know if it's on a monthly, quarterly basis.
All right, can we just talk about that for
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt this because I think this is something that we understand that maybe not everyone else does.
Yeah.
Like these two guys are representing one of the largest brands in the country. Certainly one of the most well-known insurance brands in the world. And they interface with C-level executives in their positions there, right? Allstate, there's probably like 7,000 or 8,000 agents across the country. Like these two guys are on committees where they're meeting with CEOs, chief marketing officers, chief information officers, chief privacy officers,
Yes.
like actually like the people running, Fortune 100 companies. So I just think that's important.
It is
for everyone to understand.
You're right. It's very important, and I appreciate you giving everyone the background on that. And yeah, I think to just reiterate, they're not two random Allstate agents, that own their own agencies. These are the top guys in the country that are having that communication. And so now that the audience can understand that, Chris, I'll ask you, from your standpoint, what do you think? Maybe it's not just Allstate, maybe it's all carriers can be doing better to help achieve a goal of having the best consumer experience possible?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a multifaceted approach, right? I think we heard at our conference last week that customer expectations have changed a lot. And I'm not sure our businesses have adapted the way that the customers have expected. So we have to be able to meet the customer where they're at the time that they want to your point. Mm-hmm. But I think the other thing is, and we've kind of all hit around this today, is we really have to do our jobs to elevate what an insurance policy is in the mind of a consumer.
Yeah.
It's been commoditized so much that everyone is only looking at price. And Derrek hit on the relationship aspect. Like, you need to think of your insurance policy as something that's going to be changing throughout your life depending on where you're at. So this needs to be a relationship. Everyone jumps around to different carriers looking for, the best price they can get. And to me, that's doing a disservice to, what your insurance policy can do for your family. And that's our job, right? Yeah. My sales producers in my office, I'm consistently coaching them. Like, we have to elevate our position in the mind of a consumer. When you go in to meet with a financial advisor, you don't walk in and tell the financial advisor, I want this stock, and this stock. You're going to meet with that individual to use their expertise to help your family.
Yeah.
And that's really what we need to be doing as insurance, professionals.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the biggest thing is meet the customers where they're at. We have to meet their expectation, but we also have to take that opportunity to really elevate. Like, I'm an insurance professional. I have this many years of experience. I have, these certifications that I'm required to get. You need to use, my advice and we'll build a plan for your family.
How do you think the consumer expectation has changed over time?
So I think the two biggest things, one is speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
The speed to contact. I'll tell a quick story. One of my best customers, and he's been a customer of mine for a long time, he sent me an email. The email came into my email at 7 p.m. on Friday.
Yeah.
He requested a couple of changes to his policy. I've got 2 kids. We have activities over the weekend.
Yeah.
Tuesday morning, he sends me an email at 7 a.m. It's been 4 days, and this hasn't been done yet. And I'm starting to count. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you Saturday and Sunday, but it really has only been maybe a day, maybe 24 hours of business day. So that expectation of speed is like, it needs to happen the minute I'm asking for it. And, texting is great. Most insurance companies will give you some sort of compliance solution to text your customers. That's a huge win. So speed is one. And two, I think, is kind of that, you called it the Amazon approach. Like, you're not buying a toaster. You're not buying a microwave. Like, it isn't like, let me read a couple of reviews and then find the one that's maybe in the middle or the cheapest.
Yeah.
Like, this needs to be a collaborative process.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up that story. And again, for the audience to have even more background and context, right? I viewed as the journalist and as the host of this podcast, what my role is in this room right now is I'm playing the consumer role, right? Yes, I have some knowledge of insurance, and especially on the lead generation side of things. But really, I think that's why Peter and I have built a great team, is because he brings the knowledge of insurance and the expertise of that, and I don't, right? I bring like, this is how I'd feel as a consumer. Stop fucking me over, you know what I mean? Like, it's just simple. Like, I don't want to be treated. We always go back to the rule in preschool that everyone learned is treat others how you want to be treated, the golden rule. It's like, that seemed to have gone out the window and it should have just stayed inside. Two things I want to pull out of what you said. The first thing is speed. I talk a lot about this in previous episodes. I think that today's society, and it's funny you bring up Amazon, I think Amazon single-handedly has caused people to have a lack of patience.
Yeah.
Right? I've been on this.
Purchase.
What do you mean I can't get it this afternoon? Come on. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially with something like insurance, I think there's this, what Peter and I always refer to as well, is like the unknowns of unknowns from the consumer standpoint. It's, I know I need insurance, right? I know it's mandated by the either state law or federal law, mostly state law. And I know I need some sort of auto insurance, home insurance. I'm getting a mortgage companies making me show proof of insurance, right? So they know they need it, but they don't necessarily know what they need. And that's why I actually love the Allstate model. The more I learn about insurance is because a lot of these other carriers are going direct to consumer. Like, for example, one of my cars in Florida is with Progressive, right? All I did was go online to get the policy, but guess what I did? When I was going through the policy to get it, I called Peter. I'm like, Peter, what do I need? Like, what do I need to do? Or what should I get? Yeah. And that's where I think it is so important for the consumers to understand the value that the agency side brings to the table. So that way someone there can walk them through the process and can explain to them. However, and I say this, and you guys know I'm direct and transparent, I think there needs to be a better job of less sales, and I know this is a hard balance, where it's more education for the consumer, right? I think that balance really needs to be honed in more so, and especially with the business that we're in and listening to these calls and giving feedback to our clients of how they can do better, or when they say like, hey, the consumer just wasn't interested. Well, number one, you need to overcome their objective from a sales perspective, but also educate them. And I think that's one of the things I've realized in sales, or with this podcast, when we mix education and entertainment together, education can be a driver of so many conversations because people don't know. And then when you start to explain to them what they need or how they're going to get it or how this will work, I think it goes that much further. I mean, what you guys, I assume, would all agree with that, right? So yeah. How, and maybe I know you're the sales guru over here. How do we balance that consumer experience between sales and education? How can we do better as an industry?
That's a great question, but I think let's go back to what the customer experience. I think it starts with innovation. I think it starts with awareness from the carrier level, understanding how to hit those high points for a consumer. We want to be fast. We want to be transparent. We want it to be easy and hassle free, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of carriers are now designing products that will meet that. We also want to broaden the amount of reach that we have so we can pull in a new generation of young drivers that are, trying to grow with us. So we're actually in the process of building out technologies and products that we've actually started to release and see very good results. I mean, you can kind of talk on that. I want y'all to hear about this part because it will lead into how we get into educating in that environment of speed.
Got it.
You want to talk on this? Because you're the man for this.
Yeah. So, Allstate is right now in the process of completely revamping our entire product suite. And it's all based around the consumer expectations. If I was a consumer going to buy an insurance product, what would make it easy for me? They've released our auto product in many states already. Huge win, great reviews right now from not only the consumer, but also from, people in our industry. But then it's also things like we can sell pet insurance. I mean, how many people, like, pets in this country are like the most important thing to most people. I know, it's my wife, my kids, and then my dogs.
Oh, well, most people might put the pets first.
Yeah, well,
My pet Peter knows my pets are up there.
yeah. Well, and we can cover your cell phone. We can cover. There isn't anything that we can't cover. And I think what Allstate has done for us is, allowed for us to say, we're your one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And that right in and of itself is a huge thing for customer expectations, just the ease. Like, I don't want to balance 4 different apps and 4 different online accounts. And what's my password for this? And who do I call for this?
Convenience.
Yeah, 100%.
No, spot on.
Yeah.
I talk about a couple things.
Yeah.
'Cause I think it's funny because I was talking, we're here in Texas and we're at a conference that a lot of Allstate agents are at. And we're talking to some agents yesterday. And one of them today, Allstate's new auto product launched in Indiana, I believe. And one of the agents I was talking to was like, we're going to market to some people we quoted before and do this stuff in outreach. And I was like, what do you say to someone when you're like, when this happens? Like, I'm calling you because we have a new Allstate product, or, new auto product launched in your state today. If I was a consumer, I'd say, what the hell does that mean? Like, auto insurance is auto insurance?
That's funny. I was going to ask him, what is that? That's literally what I was going to ask him.
What does this mean? Like, what do you mean you have a new product? Like, you sell auto insurance. That's your product. Like, what could that possibly mean? So I think it's good for us to, like, step back and, like, say, what does that mean? And I'm going to say what I think it means, and then I'm going to see maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But, right, an insurance policy is a contract between the insurer and the insured. So my guess is that Allstate modified contract language to probably modernize things, right? Think about like how situations have evolved, right? How did we get here today? You drove us in a
car,
but where did we get the car from?
Oh, Turo,
right?
I was like, I drove us in a car. Yeah.
Not. We didn't get the car from Enterprise.
Yeah.
We didn't get the car from like Avis or something.
And in fact, I'm out of my rental period on Turo. I mean, maybe the Turo guy will listen to this, but he never responded until he was supposed to pick up the car yesterday at 4 p.m. He didn't respond until 3 a.m. last night, saying like, "Hey, yeah, I'll pick up the car today." And then I messaged him this morning. I was like, "Hey, can I take the car?" And he was like, "Well, you're not insured through Turo." And I was like, "Well, I'm actually going to interview 3 insurance agents, like I'm pretty sure I'm covered if you give me permission to use the vehicle, right?" But yeah.
So we have to modernize the policy contract to like allow for things that like didn't exist like the last time they wrote the contract, right? But then also the pricing changes, right? We use different models, right? Then today we may say, we know what kind of a driver you are based on, a telematics app you had with a different insurance company or data the insurance company acquired from your cell phone from another app, and we know what kind of a driver you are, right? Like this stuff really happens. Like I don't think consumers really realize that, but because no one reads a data privacy policy ever, but you should. So there are different ways to price the product in a more modern way, which is a win for consumers because the more data we have, right, the more specific, right? I mean, I used to be a really bad driver, I'll be honest, And so if Maverick and I have such different data points, should we be priced the same way? Maybe not, right?
No, you shouldn't, because I don't want to pay for your bad driving.
Exactly, right? So it's a win for consumers, but I think the biggest thing is that the way in which an insurance agent quotes the policy is the technology that you guys have built is like much different and much more intuitive and easier and faster. And so that's what like we mean when we say like there's a new auto product. Like, but from a consumer perspective, I wouldn't say we have a new auto product. I'd say Allstate modified their pricing structure, and we have different rates than we had, a month ago. And it's also, there may be like now we'll cover you if you're in a, Turo renter car or something. I don't know, whatever new product features are available. So I think like that's when we say there is a new auto product. Like that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, I think the insurance industry as a whole, I would say, is comparative to like, your grandpa that's got cable TV and is getting the newspaper every day. And what Allstate is trying to do is move us into the 21st century. You mentioned data. That's a huge part of this new experience, and really get to the point where we can, give you, the individual, the price that you should be paying for your insurance, and also modify that quicker than just once a year or once every 6 months, depending on, your situation.
I think it goes back to the value proposition that Allstate and captive agents offer in comparison to, let's say, a carrier like a Geico or Progressive, where you don't have an agent to actually talk to? How can you expand, your net and get to a wider variety of folks while still giving them that TLC? Because like you said earlier, you're making an insurance decision. Who do you call? You go with Geico or Progressive, but you call somebody in the insurance world to actually get the advice that you needed.
Exactly.
And see, that's the value I think that we bring in comparison. So how do we wrap a technology stack, which is what you're referring to, that's going to cast a wider net, get more consumers in there at an affordable price that makes sense and allows you to grow with a consumer, and they can feel protected and they can feel like they're working with an expert. And that's exactly what this new product and it was all the product suites that we're bringing, which are happening soon, are going to bring to market for our consumers. And we're seeing the numbers across the board. They're tremendous.
And I think too, from the consumer perspective, and I'll say from the consumer perspective, but merging it with my insurance knowledge and background, you need to control the consumer too, right? It's like, okay, we're going to meet consumer expectations, but there's also a very fine line, in my opinion, of being able to control the consumer and have them understand that, yes, you're here to help, but you're also doing a service for them, right? This is it's not like they're doing a favor for you by joining your agency, right, in your book of business. While you appreciate it, it's certainly not a favor, right? There's work that goes behind it. So I think controlling that aspect is also very important. But I think going back to the whole point of, all right, so the consumer doesn't really understand what they're getting. Now they do understand. What changes do any of you guys think can be made to help educate the consumer more on what's inside the policy actually, besides them just reading it? Because we all know in today's world, I think that's probably the best answer is say, read through your policy, read it. That's it. It's like you should read it. But I had a conversation last night with another agent we were at dinner with while I was telling him about we're going to be recording this today. And he's like, people use insurance differently today than they ever have. And I never thought of it that way. He's like, any little thing people want to file a claim for. Their deductible's $1,000 and something comes back at $1,100, right? It's like they want to file a claim and they're going to run to file a claim. But is that the right thing to do? Most people, I think, don't have the education to make the decision. They just think, okay, my deductible is $1,000 and this costs $1,100. I'm going to still do it just because I'm going to do it, right? So I would ask all of you guys, like, what can we do to help the consumer understand what their policy is there for and what is actually covered in the policy for them?
I think spending the time with your people is the most important part. We built over a decade from literally nothing into a very large book, 5 agencies across the board, 37 staff, and we went from 3 or 4 starting out the gates. But what we did was we did it based around culture. We wanted to create an environment where our employees felt like, hey, man, this is more than just work. We wanted to make it fun. Every morning we're spending 45 minutes together. We're all fully remote across the country now. Wow. And we're able to, get together, fellowship, talk about things, educate, and then we have targeted trainings where we're getting, down into the weeds of guidelines and just different things that they need to understand, communication paths, just so that they're connecting with the client and having that more educational experience. But then I also think from a marketing perspective, we can do some creative things on social media, very similar to some of the shorts that you guys do. Why not throw some clips out there? Why not do some TikToks? Why not do something that's, little, 2-minute attention span grabbing clips that give somebody something? Did you know?
Exactly.
Did you know this or that? And I mean, just put it out there and make it fun and interesting, because let's face it, insurance is boring, for the most part with most people. But it's the most important thing that you need. You don't need, you want, but you don't want, but until you need it, right?
Yeah. And I will say, I think it's a very interesting thing that I've started to realize, especially, again, we're on the entertainment portion. There's an educational portion of this podcast where I've gone down the road where it's forced education. And I think that right there is the biggest pushback you get from anything. You see it with children in school. They don't want to do their homework. Why? Because it's forced for them to do their homework. And that happens, I think, with a lot of things in life. My family's in the tax business. People hate doing their taxes. Yes, it's hard, but it's also forced. They have to do it. I think the same thing with insurance. People, because they're forced to have insurance, already have a dislike and a distaste in their mouth for it because it's forced upon them as an adult, right? Like as an adult, you've built an empire for yourself. You could be the most badass individual on the planet, have everything, but you have to have insurance, right? So it's like, I have to have it. And I think that is also a barrier for consumers of like, okay, I have to have it. So because I have to have it, I want to get it at the cheapest cost that I can get it at. I want to drive the price. I think those elements add into how the consumers make their experience go on themselves. Like if they didn't have to have it and they were like, hey, you can get this. This might help you out in the long run. This might save you some money. I guarantee we'd have a completely different consumer perspective on the experience of getting insurance as a whole.
Well, I think everything you said is spot on. But I think too, that most people are pretty lucky, right? And don't experience like huge tragic losses, right? And there's a lack of appreciation of the product and like the understanding of the product until you experience catastrophe, which like, right, we hope that people don't, just out of like basic, like, human, like, decency. But like if they do, your house does burn down, right? You have a place to stay that night, right? You're not homeless. You're not like, right? I think like 83% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck, right? You're not frantically trying to figure out how you're going to get money to pay for a hotel room for you and, your wife and 3 kids. Like the product, people who've had the unfortunate circumstance of using the product appreciate it because of what it does. And I think that insurance companies could do a better job of like just explain, right? I mean, they probably don't do this because like no one wants to like be sad and depressed, right? But like of like explaining like, what's happened. I mean, no doubt you guys have had clients that have experienced tragic losses. I'll never forget, I was an Allstate agent for a period of time, right? Allstate prefers when clients bundle their home and auto or renters and auto together. And, no secret to anyone probably that there's financial incentives for agents to do that, of course. And so I remember there was this girl that I sold an insurance policy to, an auto policy in Michigan. And didn't force her, of course, like it's the consumer's choice, but like presented to her like, here's the discount you're going to get attaching a renter's policy. The renter's policy is effectively costing you very little extra money a month.
Yeah, renter's policy.
She was like, she wasn't like sold on it, but she did it because she knew that it was the right thing to do, but she didn't have a lot of disposable income. Like that's what I'm really getting at here. Well, what happened is someone in her apartment building fell asleep with a cigarette.
Ooh.
Right? It set off the fire alarm. Thank God the building didn't burn down or anything like that. But what happened was the sprinkler system like went off, and like anyone who thinks that's like clean, nice water,
you're wrong.
No, it comes out. It's like
green.
It's disgusting. But I remember, and I'll never forget. Like she was, right. It not only like got over her clothes and everything, but also like like everything was soaking wet, right? They couldn't stay there that night. They needed new stuff, right? Their clothes were effectively destroyed. Some of them could be cleaned, but like most of it was destroyed. And she was not in a position where she had any money like to go buy new stuff, right? She's single mom, cash strapped. Like she thanked me for that. And like, I was like, wow, like that's crazy. Like this actually bad stuff does happen, and like this is a product that protects people. And I think that insurance agents and insurance carriers could do a better job probably of explaining the catastrophes that happen all the time, right? I mean, you guys are both in Texas, right? Texas is a pretty crazy weather state, in recent years. Like there's a lot, like there's probably not many homeowners in Texas that haven't experienced some kind of homeowner's claim. So maybe folks here understand it a little differently, but let's say someplace like Ohio, right? Where there's no hurricanes, right? There's no, very few tornadoes, like, right? Not a lot happens, right? There's not like structure fires on every block, in the country, like every day. they probably may not realize as much as someone else, like the value that the product provides, because it's less likely that they may need to use it, which also means it's priced a hell of a lot lower, right? A homeowner's policy in Ohio is like crazy cheap compared to like a homeowner's policy like in Texas, like on the coast, in a high wind zone or something. So I think that carriers and agents could do a better job of really explaining and I think this is the best way to do it now I'm thinking about it. I'm sorry to carry on this so long.
You're good.
But let's think about this for a second. There's some really bad online ads out recently that are like insurance agents get like 80% of the money that, you pay for as a commission. And it's like, well, that's crazy. Like, I mean, if that was true, I think we would probably have like the collective net worth of like Jeff Bezos, but we're not getting nearly that much commission, but also the carriers aren't making that much money. This isn't like, to quote Tom Wilson, the CEO of Allstate, like, this isn't a software business like where we just have like 5% margins, like a blip, like 5%'s the entire margin. Like, different companies do it a little differently, but most of the largest carriers, right, they're making a few points. So what do I mean by that? Every dollar you give them in profit, they may be making a penny, 2 pennies.
It's completely accurate.
Right?
Yeah.
Most of the money, right?
We celebrate that.
Yeah. I mean, most of the money, probably I would estimate, somewhere in the mid 80s is going to pay out claims. The rest of the money is going to fund the infrastructure of the organization, the people, the agent commissions, the people processing claims in the claims department, right? And then a very small amount is profit at the end of the day. So it's not, these companies do very well because of the volume of transactions that they do, not because of the margin, right? This isn't retail where we're making, 200% on this shirt or something, right?
Right.
This is, the margins are paper thin here. And I think that that's something that insurance agents and carriers could do a better job explaining, like, all the money you're paying, like, that's going out and paying claims, like the vast majority of it. Like, this isn't like a gotcha gimmick type situation.
Let's talk about something that could change the way you handle your money. Imagine a world where your bank account is as fortified as an armored truck. Welcome to the Brinks Armored Account, the last debit card you'll ever need. With at least one monthly deposit of $500 or more, you can say goodbye to monthly fees and hello to money management that pays you back. With the Brinks Armored Account, you get cash back on your purchases, access to over 100,000 ATMs with one free withdrawal per month, and an optional overdraft service that respects your boundaries. But that's not all. Brinks takes security as seriously as you do. Enjoy peace of mind with ID theft protection and purchase assurance, guarding your transactions and new purchases against damage or theft. It's not just an account, it's an armor for your finances. Qualify for early direct deposit, and you can receive your paycheck or government benefits up to 2 days faster. It's your money. Why would you wait? Step into the future of financial confidence with the Brinks Armored Account. Visit brinksarmored.com to learn more or connect with Brinks Armored on social media. Brinks Armored Account. It's not just safe, it's Brinks safe. I think as you guys have been talking for the past 10, 15 minutes, something that's came into my mind is I think technology can be the solution here. And that's what Peter and I's whole business philosophy is, always solution oriented, right? We're problem solvers at the core. And using technology, I think even something like an AI solution embedded into the Allstate app where someone can ask it, hey, is this covered under my policy? Or would this potentially be covered? And of course, you can give a disclaimer. You need to check with your agent and do all that. But at least now the consumer has a go-to place that they can ask a question to. And I think if we can try and utilize the technology aspect, that's where I think my generation too will be more open and feel more comfortable with the insurance process of saying, all right, there's some sort of answer book, right? I think that's the end all. It's not me picking up the phone. Right.
Hang on though, we gotta I gotta dive into this from the other perspective because I appreciate what you're saying, but these guys will dive into this too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like we have to understand why that always isn't possible, right? This is a contract, right? The words are chosen very carefully in the contract, but they're still litigated, right? I mean, crazy story, but this was like big in like insurance news maybe a year or two ago, but someone had sex in a car and got an STD and filed a claim on their auto policy. Like, this is real. And like, this went to like,
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
this went to like, this wasn't like kicked out. Like,
They weren't with Allstate.
they were not with Allstate. They were not with Allstate. It was, I don't remember the carrier was, but I know it wasn't with Allstate. But like, in all honesty, like, this dragged out into litigation and went to like I'm fairly certain it went to like in a court of appeals. Like, I don't remember what state it was. I didn't follow the case. Like, it was like kind of like one of these things like people saw in the news. It was like, this is nuts. But like, those are the kind of disputes that consumers get into with their insurance company, because would anyone, like any reasonable person, think that if someone has sex in their car and contracts an STD, that their auto insurance should compensate? I mean, I don't think a reasonable
Would that fall under bodily injury?
Yeah, I mean, like, literally, they made a bodily injury claim. Like, that is the claim that they made. So it's insane. So it's hard because not knowing that, the unknown unknowns, right?
Yeah.
You know, and consumers, with the help of some crazy lawyers, in my opinion, like, bring these claims. And like, the insurance carrier has to waste money defending what most reasonable people wouldn't think. So
This
that's
is
why it's
something
hard.
we need to hit on right here. A lot of folks don't realize that right now, bodily injury claims, you know, anything with liability related claims are generally driven from an attorney perspective,
Yeah.
where they're collecting massive fees and driving up guess whose premiums.
Yeah.
So this is something that insurance companies are really lobbying to help kind of, I guess, put some roadblocks, if you will, in place to kind of keep this from getting out of control, which is where it's heading. I mean, you could probably talk a little bit more on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to hit on kind of what you were talking about with technology, because I agree with you. I think, you know, the only answer you're ever going to get on an AI app is like, contact your agent. You know, because there are just so many nuances there. But using technology, you know, Derrek and I are more accessible now than we ever have been. You know, not too many people want to pick up the phone and call and ask their questions, which we're happy to do and love when our customers do that. But you can email me, you can text me, you can go to my website and send me a question through there. You can get on any of my social media and ask me questions. So I always encourage my clients, like, if something pops in your head and it's insurance related, then one, you know, you're doing something pretty boring if you're thinking about insurance. But two, just ask me. Like, anytime. We don't need to schedule an appointment. You don't need to, just ask the question. We'll get you the answer. And that's how we can start to build your education of things. And I may not be able to tell you that, that's 100% going to be covered, but we can at least have a conversation about it and anytime that you want.
Here's the thing I'll say back to you guys. I brought you all on here because all of you in your respective fields are the best of the best. But there are, just like everything, bad actors and bad players, right? And I think you guys are accessible and your teams are accessible, but other agents may not make themselves as accessible or have the kindness and the personality that cares so much about the consumer or the customer, right? Maybe they're just focused on growth in their business, and they're out there, right? Like, we know though who those people are. We're not going to single them out on this because, you know, we got two of the chairmen of the Allstate committees here, but and it's not just in the Allstate world, right? Like, I know a couple independent agency owners that, are they going to take the time out? I know one, and he won't even let me give his cell phone number out to people because, or even like his direct contact email information. It's like, send it to this person, which I get, right? We're all busy, but I think there's that balancing act where if people are dealing with your guys' agencies, they're lucky, because they have someone that cares. So what questions can the consumer ask to their agent to solidify the relationship, to make sure that these are the right agents for their policies?
Yeah, so I think Derrek hit on culture. I think a question you could ask directly is, one, how long have you been with this insurance agency? Because I think that what I have found in my experience is agencies that are run like Derrek and ours, very customer focused, our team stays around. Like, I've got the tenure of my staff is 10 plus years. And so I think that that's the number one question I would ask. How long have you been with Chris's agency, Derrek's agency? And the second thing that I would encourage asking is, how involved is the agency owner, right? Like, yes,
that's a great question.
We're business owners. We've got, I always use the iceberg example. Like what you see 9 to 5 is about 10% of what a business owner has to do.
Maybe 5%.
Yeah, right. But even though Derrek and I and my team is mostly remote as well, building that culture, you have to be involved in that. You have to cultivate it on a daily basis with your team. And I still answer customers' phone calls. Like I still jump in there if people are at lunch, I'm answering the phone. Like you have to be involved. I'm 12 plus years in this business now with Allstate, and I'm still answering those customer calls. So how long have you, sales producer, been employed with your agent, and how involved is your agency owner?
I think those are fantastic questions. Also with your team, in terms of culture, you got to inspect what you expect.
Yeah.
And really drilling down, holding people accountable to make sure that they're truly staying on point with whatever your business core values are, making sure that you're meeting that person where they are when they need you, because you made a promise and a commitment to do that. And that's the most important part of that insurance contract, is it is a promise. So when bad things happen, how do we as agents, how do we as owners, how do we as producers show up for that customer and truly, truly help them in their time of need?
So with that sentiment at hand, what is the claims process, and how involved are the agents during a claims process?
So this is a great debate. Again, going back to your previous question, I think that is very agency dependent. I think that I may be a little bit different here than some of my agency peers. I don't mind when a claim goes a little bit off track, because what I can then do is step in and show the value of my agency. The claims process, typically, most consumers, you're going to be dealing mostly with your claims adjuster, your inspector that comes out to your house if it's a property claim. You're not going to be dealing with your agency very much. We don't adjust claims. I don't have an adjuster's license. I can't do anything as it relates to the claims payouts or anything like that. But I also want to show my customers that, one, again, Derrek's point, this is a promise. This is, it's just a piece of paper that we talked about. But now this is where it comes into play. So let me help. The biggest area that we can help with is communication. Our claims adjusters are fantastic. They do a really good job, but they have a lot of cases that they're working always concurrently, and they're outbound dialing 90% of their day. So to catch someone on the phone at the claims department is difficult. We can help with the communication part of it. I don't want to be having coverage conversations during a claim. We should have already done that. If you're asking me about coverage during a claim, then I didn't do my job. You should say, I know what I'm covered for. How can I get in contact with my claims department? So those are the two big things I would say is, you're going to be dealing a lot with your carrier for the most part, but a misnomer in the insurance industry is we don't really get updates from the claims department. They don't tell us what's going on. We typically do not know if something is off the rails in your claims process. So let us know. The consumer, keep those lines of communication open. Again, email, text, whatever is easiest for you. We're here at any time, but let me know, and I can always step in and push if I need to push.
One thing that you touched on was every now and then it's good for us to be able to see if those claims go off track so we can step in and assist. But I think what's awesome about what Allstate does with our committees and our councils is they go straight to the troops on the ground. So we're the liaisons between Allstate, the agents and our clients, right? So we're hearing in real time exactly what our clients are going through. They're sending it up through our channels, and we're able to communicate that so that all in all, we get that better customer experience, and we're doing it constantly. I mean, we have a committee dedicated to claims, and they are doing some good work there. I mean, just great work. Allstate, I guess, what was it, during COVID? We kind of took some steps back, and it hurt us when we had to rehire, when we pulled back, and we kind of had to rethink things. We saw some of our numbers slip in customer satisfaction when it came to claims, but Allstate went all in. Hired 2,000 more claims reps. They're hiring. They're going to some of the best carriers and pulling some of the top, leadership from them, and allowing us to say, "Oh God, we're learning from so many different spaces. How can we make this better, all in all?" But at the end of the day, I would say that claims is probably the most important thing that we do. And if we can have carriers that are focused on really that portion of our responsibility, I think you're gonna get a better ultimate customer experience experience, and it's going to make our lives a lot easier. So the information that you provide back to your agents is valuable as a consumer.
Yeah.
Give that to them and let them step in and help. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things I want to pull out here, right? And my family has been insured with Allstate for a very long time. In fact, my dad says that Allstate was there for me when, I swear to God, this is a true quote. Allstate was there for me when no one else was, right? And when my dad had, barely 2 nickels to scratch together, Allstate insured him, and so he's a loyal person, so he's stuck with Allstate as he's continued to grow and evolve. When I was 21, a couple years ago, sort of near COVID, I had my car stolen. Okay, it was at a shop. I'm almost positive. I am positive it was an inside job based upon the video I saw of they clipped it in the middle. The car's there, and then boom, the car's not there, and you see no one steal the car. I'm like, okay, this makes no sense. But nonetheless, right? It's one thing that has always been my family's dynamic is if there's something that needs to get done, we're doing it as the kids, right? Like whether it's adding a new boat, a new car, a new whatever on the policy, or figuring out how to navigate a claims process, like that's on us to figure out. My dad's like, here's the number, call them. I'm not dealing with this. You deal with this. So I dealt with the claims process, and I will say, like, candidly, I was disappointed, right? Because taking a step back, I kind of realized that we were a very loyal and I would say probably a rather large client to Allstate, to be honest with you, when you looked at everything that we have with Allstate. And so I was disappointed because you said, they have a lot of different cases. And with a stolen car, I think it's 30 days. Like you have 30 days. If they don't recover the vehicle, then you get a payout of the average price of the vehicle that's in the marketplace and how many miles were on the car, right? There's all this math that's being computed in the back end. But I think it would be so productive to talk about the what-if situations from the sales cycle process and say, hey, just so you know, I want to be upfront with you. If you have to file a claim, our office is really not involved in that process, because that's where I think the consumers are very much let down. We expect the agents to be there for us at all times. And then you have a catastrophic event is usually when you're filing a claim, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we don't really handle that aspect. You have to work with your adjuster in that aspect. So I would say if there's someone from a C-level listening to this from Allstate, I think that each agency office should have a person for claims in that office that can be almost like a client advocate, and they work with them, and then that person works with the adjuster, so that you have this level of comfortability where you know that you're going to, I was going to say, you're in good hands, but that was too cheesy. That you know that you at least are taken care of from the people that you have trusted, right? This office that that you've trusted. So I think that's could be a reasonable solution.
We advise all our clients, and we train on this to, hey, let us be the first person that you call, just to make sure that you don't call the claims department for whatever reason. You got rear-ended and a little minor damage, and it's like you said, below the deductible, and you end up getting a zero claim, which a lot of people don't know that affects your rates.
Yeah.
And so we're like, why don't you call us? Let us make sure. Let us look at everything, and then we can make an educated decision based on that, on how to move forward, what's best for you guys. So I think most agencies, you would agree, are doing that, at least at Allstate.
100%.
And, the other portion is just, I think it's really, once again, going back and training your people, making sure that they're aware, and then going back and then making sure they're doing it. But we have a dedicated claims person at our agency, and a lot of agencies that are starting to build the scale are doing the same thing. They'll have somebody dedicated in their office, so somebody's accountable to make sure that they're getting followed up with. It's not just this old school model of service, including every single aspect of the business, and you wear the jack of all trades, master's none. Mm-hmm. There's no accountability if you got everyone in your office doing every single service related activities.
Yeah.
So specialization has been very important. I think a lot of agents that are building to scale are utilizing that and seeing significant results. And
I will say, right, they never found the car. Although I did get calls from several police departments like, yeah, we're chasing your car right now. I'm like, yeah, okay, good luck. You'll never catch the car. But I actually believe that car got exported to a country in the Middle East based upon where I could track the vehicle. Afterwards. Yeah. The last place I tracked it was like in the middle of the port of Detroit. So I'm almost positive that's where it went. But I'll end this by saying I was very happy with the outcome, right? After the 30 days had gone past, it was very reasonable, the money that I got paid out for that vehicle based upon what the current marketplace was for those cars at the time, right? So I will say I was happy with the outcome at the end of it. It's an emotional reaction. It's an emotional response, and I think that's a big part of that process when you file a claim. There's a lot of stress, right? It's your home, it's your car, it's something that is probably one of your biggest assets, and you need that hand-holding. You need someone to kind of be there for you, be that shoulder to lean on for either information or just honestly pure emotion. Like, people are emotional.
Yes.
You know what I mean? People are emotional. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. And I'll give a shout out to our new Vice President, Mike Fiato of Claims.
Great guy.
Super great guy.
Great guy.
And one of the things he's been preaching is, we are in a people business, and you have to be empathetic to the customer when you're talking to them in every situation, because most of the time it may not be the worst thing you've ever been through, but it's one of the worst things you've been through.
Yeah.
And it's so important that you keep that kind of bedside manner. And one of the things I always say is, telling the customer that we don't have an update can be an update. Like, it's okay to call the customer and say, we're in the same point that we were a week ago, just wanted to touch base and let you know nothing has really changed.
Like, that's amazing.
That's an update as well. So
even a text message doing that does the same for the consumer. They're like, hey, I didn't even have to talk, especially, the younger generation here.
Yeah.
And there's so much automation available now for our agencies that, like, we get a claim into our office, and I've got a video that I pre-recorded that we can send to the customer. We can schedule text messages to them to check in throughout the process. Like, any insurance agent that's listening to this is like, man, that's a lot of work. Hiring someone dedicated to that, I don't know if I have the cash flow for that. It doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't with the tools that we have in our agencies now.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot for a second. I want to talk about the younger generation getting into insurance. I think from an ownership perspective, something that we talked about even last night as we scaled and have grown Lead Clinic, we're a lot in the ecosystem of Allstate, and it's a very entrepreneurial ecosystem. All the agency owners of Allstate usually are sophisticated, and they're there to grow their business. And I say sometimes, because it is sometimes not, but sometimes they are, and especially the agents that we choose to work with are the top producers for Allstate. What is the sentiment and what is going on? Do you see a younger generation coming into this business?
Absolutely. And I actually, Chris has a very compelling story of how he started, and I think it would relate really, really closely with your audience and why there's so much upside to starting, at the bottom, getting your license, filtering through, and the opportunities that you could have, especially if you start young. Oh my God, it's huge.
All right, Chris, let's hear it.
Yeah, so my dad had been in insurance my whole life, mostly life insurance. When you fill out those forms in fourth grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one puts insurance. Like, you don't want to do that. When I was in college, I was playing football at the University of Oklahoma, and there was an agency owner in town. I'm looking for spending. I need beer money. I need money to go out, take girls out. That's what I need.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I'll go work. There's an agency in town I can go work for. My dad knows her, can get me hooked up. So I start working, during the summer. At that time I was still filing papers and, doing kind of that manual labor stuff. And I really started to get a feel for, the agency owner. Her name was Julia Chu, kind of her, the ability for her, the lifestyle that she lived, the philanthropies she was able to do, and all that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, I maybe need to start thinking about this. So she got me licensed. I started picking up a few more hours. And then kind of later in my college career, it really became like my master's program, if you will. I went to school, ended up getting a degree in something that I was interested in, health and exercise science, but I worked, 25, 30 hours a week in her office, and that was really kind of my master's program. And I was really able to see, like, not only what this can do for me and my family, but how we can help people, how we can truly help people. it doesn't take very often. You deliver that death benefit claim to a family going through that, and you immediately, the light bulb clicks. And so the other story that I'll give, and this is one for my office manager, one of the unique things about the insurance industry is you really can be a small business owner and set it up however you see fit, whatever's going to make you the most successful. But I can guarantee you that most of the people that worked for Derrek and I during COVID never worried about their job. Many people in this country today, it is about as safe of a career as you can look at when you look at, a pandemic or, being able to work remote. Derrek and I both have almost fully remote teams. The flexibility in our industry is, in my opinion, second to none.
And I love, the way that you kind of brought the emotional part of the story. When I'm thinking about your audience, young hustlers here that are wanting to get into a lucrative field, and the opportunities they're amazing. I have people that barely graduated high school, some with GEDs, went on to graduate, some with some college experience. These people are making six figures a year, and some are doing it within the first 6 months of getting on.
Yeah.
So, and that's at a producer perspective, level. Once you get up to these agency level, I mean, there is no roof.
Yeah.
There's agents doing very, very big revenue, taking advantage of very big revenue opportunities, and it gives them opportunity to continue to give to community, to continue to help others within your business, help some other young hustlers come in there and be able to start their lives. I mean, there's very rewarding from both the ownership side, but also I think from the producer side with the opportunity that it creates, especially with someone that's like, yo, I got the drive, man, I want to go, I want something, but man, I've had to work my ass off my entire life, and I just feel like I've never had that opportunity. I tell you what, go get your license, go do some research, find an agent that's growing, and get on board with them, and don't just learn from that agent, learn from many. Mm-hmm. Go there and get some experience. Tell the agent up front, hey, I want to learn this business. I don't know, I can give you a commitment of a year. I can give you a commitment of 2 years, but I want to learn from many. And then let them know up front what your goals are, what your mission is. If you come in giving that kind of, information and heart to the person across the table, I promise you'll be like, man, I'm willing to invest in this person for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think one of the cooler things about the insurance space, and people don't think about their career choices this way, and I find it fascinating that they don't. Listen, like you guys have said, like the younger generation want to text. I am honestly, that is one way I do not relate to the younger generation. I'm totally an old soul. Like I call people all the time. I FaceTime people. People get so annoyed. Like just send a text. I like to call. That's just me. Mm-hmm. But I think my generation does not look at career choices in terms of working hard equates to growth financially. There are some careers that you could work 80, 100 hours a week, and you're still making the same amount of money. But in something like the insurance space, if you take that energy, especially if you're a producer, and you're putting in the time and energy and effort, and you're learning and you're selling, the more you work is going to equate to you making more money, right? And I think that is one of the cooler things to me in my position about the insurance space. Like sometimes I'll either have like random people, fans of the podcast come to me and be like, hey, like, what do you think I should do? And I always say, like, I think insurance gives you, number one, like the ability to understand sales. And sales, I think, is like one of the best tools you could have in life in general. But two, it equates to working hard equals more money. Like there's a guy, Peter knows him, a very close friend of my family, and he works at Delta. And this guy works so hard. Like when I tell you he works so hard, he is working so hard. He's always at the airport. And guess what? He doesn't make more money the harder he works. So how rare is that for Delta, right? If Delta's listening, you need to give this guy a raise. You can contact us, we'll tell you who it is. But the harder he works, he's stagnant. There's no change, right? Maybe in 5 years he can grow into a better position, into a leadership position, but still there's no change. And I think that's where insurance is cool to me, along with other sales positions. But insurance, I think, is different because I don't want to use the word easier, but I think it's more accessible if you're a producer to then go out and maybe open up your own agency, right? Like if you're a mortgage broker and you're working at a big mortgage company, it's a little bit more challenging to go and start your own mortgage company. Sure. You know what I mean? So I think there's that aspect to it as well, and I just think it's a phenomenal industry, and I'll take a couple minutes to tell the reason that Peter and I partnered together was. My grandfather started in the tax world, right? He was a chartered accountant from England, moved to America, became a CPA. And then as I was growing up, he would always say, anyone you meet could be our client. That's literally what he would always say for taxes, right? Whether you own a business, whether you're a W-2 employee, anyone you meet could be our client in America. And so as I wanted to diversify my family's eggs and put them in different baskets, I thought of insurance. And so this was at the time Peter and I had been talking. He's opening up his independent agency. And I said, I want to partner with you on it, right? Like insurance is something that every single person needs if you live in America. If you want to drive a car, you need to get insurance. You want to own a home, you need to get insurance. And I will say, right, like we started in that and then obviously switched to lead clinic and selling leads. But again, we are still very much, and honestly, I think we are making a bigger impact on the industry as a whole doing lead clinic than we would having our own independent agency, because with an independent agency, right, we're going to start in Michigan, we're going to scale to other states. But with this, I think we're in all states for the most part.
Wow.
Yeah, for the most part. So, we are helping drive that consumer experience, which is helpful to everyone, helping the agencies grow, helping the carriers grow, and of course, helping us grow. Is there anything you think, Peter, because I know you started in insurance at a very young age, that would be important for the audience to hear?
Well, I'll tell how I got started in insurance because I think it's a good story.
Yeah, I think it kind of resonates with what Derek said about I'm only here for a little bit and then leave.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my family had, some real estate properties and a retail business and some other things, and so I would help them with various things, and I interacted with the insurance broker, and quite interesting because she was a woman selling commercial insurance, and she was maybe in her early 60s, late 50s, like when I met her. But like she did this like most of her entire life, and she came from a point when like there were not like women salespeople in the commercial insurance industry. So I had like a lot of respect for her. Like she hustled. Like she was a phenomenal person. And so she's like, you should do insurance. Like, you can talk to people. She's like, you're like one of the only clients that like reads the documents we send and stuff. Like, you should like do this. And I was like, okay, like, and that's how I started. And then I ended up going to work for an Allstate agent, and was very transparent with him. Like, I'm not going to probably be here long. Like, I'm going to do this for like a couple years and then like do my own thing. Like, that's just me. That's who I am. Like,
love that.
That was, I'm going to tell you up front, much like you said earlier. And that's how I got started in this. And I think that to tell young people today who are looking for a rewarding career, right? It is a very rewarding career. It can be a very lucrative career, much like you said, right? I always want something where like, my effort is going to equal what I get out of it. I never wanted to be a salaried employee somewhere. Some people are like, commissions are bad, salespeople there's this real like negative societal, like thought process about, sales being bad. And I think that, the bad actors give that impression. But in
every space.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Every space, even outside of sales, right?
Exactly. And so I think that, folks need to understand, like, being a salesperson is a good thing, right? Like let's step back. Let's also step back and be a little less risk adverse, right? Some people like fall into the, I need a safety net, I need this. And I'm not saying that uncapped, earning potential is like right for every one scenario, but don't listen to what mom and dad or Aunt Susie or whoever says about it. Like, analyze it yourself and say, am I the type of person, is it that I'm willing to bet on myself? And if you are, whether you're selling insurance, selling mortgages, selling iPads, who cares? Like, that's probably a pretty good career for you. And I think you have to analyze your own personality and understand what kind of person you are. And if you're driven to be successful and you're going to put in, the reps to like get to the outcome, then yeah, like it's a great career.
I've got something to encourage on top of that. So this is for all my introverts in the audience. Our number one salespeople that we have are introverted people. They're patient, they listen, they understand, they learn the sales process. And don't get me wrong, extroverts, they have an edge there. But then once you go past that point of talking, a lot of people can talk. A lot of people can have a monologue, but can you have a conversation?
Yeah.
And I think introverted people have the best opportunity. And a lot of times it's a confidence thing, or maybe you're just somebody that takes things in, but you know inside that, hey, I can do this if I had the right mentorship or the right, person in front of me. And you'd be surprised how many agent owners out there that is a mission of theirs. That is why they're doing it. It's any entrepreneur is going to tell you. You might start with these visions of grandeur, money signs, but you stay in it because you love what you're doing. Yeah. And I guarantee you're wrapping that around your people for the majority that have become successful. So when you align and partner with somebody like that that's willing to trade their time and invest in you, I mean, what great opportunities there is out there. But I want to encourage the introverted people too. And I also want to differentiate between, one of the great things about insurance is longevity. Mm-hmm. And so I think it touches all types of people, so we have our superstars that we've been talking about here because, those are your shining lights. They're the ones that bring revenue in the front door. But the most, I would say equally as important, are your rock stars, your steady eddies, the people that are with you. You want to make a good living. You want a family. You want to have work-life balance. All those opportunities are there too. So there's a space for both in this world that we're in. And the net, it literally touches everybody here. And I felt that was important to kind of differentiate.
Yeah. I think it's very important. And I think the last word that I'll say in relation to this topic is, I think the younger people, while they're getting into insurance because I think they see dollar signs, right? I think that's honestly probably the main driver of why people go into insurance. I know, especially like from my age group right now, like the big one is life insurance, right? Like that's like everyone is talking about, oh, you could scale an agency for life insurance and do this way. But I want to offer something, and maybe this is for you too to take and do something with. I think it would be very cool, and again, going with sales and stringing on those emotional guitar strings, I think it would be very, very enlightening to the consumer if there was an opportunity that says, hey, is your kid 10, 13 years old and you're getting insurance? Like, why don't you have something separate to send to them so they can understand? Hey, okay, we're getting insurance for the family. This is what this means. This is how this works. And now bringing the kid into the conversation again, because it's not forced on the child, right? So if your child and your family doesn't give you that opportunity to learn, like mine did, right? Where they're like, hey, go and call. But now you're going through the parents and the parents are like, hey, if you want to learn about this, here's the opportunity too. I bet you it's a little bit more receptive. Not all of the time, but some of the time it's going to be more receptive. And then people go into it for not just the dollar signs, right? They go into it because they care, because they want to make an impact, because for whatever reason it may be. I think that could be helpful and insightful because we live in this generation where I'll go back to, I think it was called financial nihilism. Is that right, Ben? Mm-hmm. Financial nihilism? Do you know about that?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so it's the most fascinating thing. I was telling this guy about how I viewed my age group, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's called financial nihilism. I'm like, oh, I never knew that. And then he went in, he's like,
I have no idea what this is.
Okay, so financial nihilism basically means that my generation, and I'm like on the cusp, millennial, Gen Z, whatever, is my generation wants to gamble more so than work hard for something. So they would rather take the get rich quick approach to then put work and effort into something, which is why we're seeing this massive explosion of gambling websites. Pick a player, parlay this, do this. It's no one wants to take, and this goes back to how I got on this conversation with the gentleman I was talking to, of patience and consistency, right? And I think that perfectly aligns with an agency's growth, right? Stay patient, stay consistent, do the same thing over and over again in a better way and maybe a more efficient way, but have that patience and consistency to grow. Whereas now my generation, they would rather take $150, place it on a parlay to hit for $1 million because they think that they'll just never be able to achieve the success going through the traditional route. And I think when someone put it to me that way, I'm like, you're right. How many people do I know in my age group that instead of either investing in a business that they want to start, even putting money away into a high earning savings account, they're taking that money and they're gambling with it. You know, they're gambling with it. I see Peter's ready to talk.
Yeah, no, all right, because like I think this is important. I think that anyone who thinks that way, they're very misguided, and they probably don't have good business-related mentors in their life, because let's just talk about any of the products that we sell in the insurance world, right? There are new entrants to the insurance game every day, right? I'll be at a conference tomorrow in Chicago where there will be a company represented there called Boundless Rider that is a motorcycle insurance startup company that just does motorcycle insurance and is one of the more fascinating startups that like I'll interface with, you know, in the next few years. So talk about, there are huge brands like Allstate, State Farm, Farm Bureau, Geico, Progressive, right? But there is a company that's entering this space because they believe they are the better fit for the consumer in this very, you know, niche market, right? There's a company called Hagerty that's at the conference that we're at right now in Texas. Hagerty does classic car insurance better than anyone. Why? Because they were founded by a classic car enthusiast, and they built a, like, let's just think about this for a second. They built a brand and, like, let's call it a lifestyle around classic cars, and no other insurance company, I don't care what anyone tells me, I love Allstate. No one is passionate about Allstate from a consumer perspective. Consumers are passionate about Hagerty and are passionate about classic cars. Okay. So you can do just about anything. You don't have to like invent like, you know, mind-blowing technology to do something. You just have to do it better and relate to your audience of consumers better than your competitors are. You can literally copy and paste the exact same product, right? And sell it differently and create a brand and a lifestyle around that and find people who are passionate about a small subset of something. So figure out what you're passionate about, right? I mean, starting Lead Clinic wasn't, I wanted to be a better lead buyer. I wanted to stop getting screwed over by like the people who've been like screwing over insurance agents in the lead gen space for the past 20 years. I just was like, oh my God, like how many more years am I going to go by spending $600,000-$700,000 in lead gen and not knowing what the hell is going on with it, right? And that's
where they're
like,
coming from, or
where they're coming from, what's happening, like knowing nothing. Like that's why we built a transparent lead generation company, because as a consumer of that product, I was a really pissed off consumer of that product. I'm like, I just feel like I'm lighting money on fire. Yeah. But like I need to light the money on fire to like make the phones ring, and I need the phones to ring to be able to like sell policies. I need to sell policies to be able to pay my employees and grow my business and support my, you know, lifestyle, right? So it was this necessary evil. But anyone who thinks that way is short-sighted in the fact that you don't have to have some like genius new product or new idea.
Right.
You have to just go do something better than anyone else does. I don't care if you want to open a grocery store, you want to open a car rental place, right? Think of all of the things that were just done better, right? Cable television sucked. People hated it, right? I mean, I still hate it, right? So what comes out of that, right? Netflix.
I like this example though, because I think we're making a U-turn back to like bundling everything together. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but and think about this, right? Everyone hated cable television for so long, right? Now you have Netflix. Now I have like 52 different streaming things.
Now I'm paying 50 times more for
and
everything.
I'm like, hang on, wouldn't it be great if like one company just like, bundled all these channels together for me? And like, well, that was cable TV. So like we've gone from one extreme to the other, and you know that ecosystem. But you getting back to what you're talking about, like people need to be, nothing is get rich quick scheme, right?
Yeah,
Like everything
100%.
is, were you guys both like scratch agents, started with 0 policies?
I started with very few.
Very few.
I mean, less than 750. So,
Okay,
I mean,
so basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys built massive businesses, started with very few customers, right? And when I built my Allstate agency, started 0 policies, right? And so is that is it fast to build a business that way?
Patience,
No, right?
patience.
Patience, everything. You've got to be patient, and if you are patient, you will win.
Yeah.
If you are impatient and you want to hit success, before we finish this podcast, you are going to be the least successful person ever. You have to be patient.
I also think that linking yourself up with a mentor that's going to give you that time and help you understand purpose is huge. That's one of the things that we do. I mean, we bring folks in specifically through our interviewing process on our 5 core values, and it's about accountability. It's about leading by example. It's about servant leadership.
Yeah.
There's things that we want to bring folks in on so that they can help find their purpose, find where their passions are, what's going to help them. This is not an easy thing. This day-to-day life we live is tough.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting to understand yourself, becoming self-aware, taking a humble approach, learning that there is opportunity in everything, and really just putting yourself around people that are going to champion that for you and help you get there is huge. And that's something that we do at the agency that I think really promotes that kind of opportunity. And I think a lot of agents do that. I'm sure you do that as well.
100%. Yeah.
More and more people are starting to become concerned about their plastic waste. That's why having a fun, refillable water bottle has become such a popular trend. So let me introduce you to our official beverage sponsor of the Best podcast, Path, a sleek and completely recyclable aluminum water bottle that is also BPA-free and refillable. Refilling your Path bottle not only reduces plastic waste, but also contributes to becoming carbon positive after only 4+ refills. Since 2015, Path has been on a mission to end single-use plastic. It's not about drastic changes. It's about simple lifestyle switches. By educating people and encouraging them to #refill it, Path shows that every refill counts in the fight against plastic waste. It's a small step that can make a huge difference. You can find Path in over 55,000 retail stores worldwide, including stores like Whole Foods, Target, CVS, Sprouts, and many more. Path is also present in airports, gyms, schools, and has extended its reach to travel, fitness, national parks, hospitality, and healthcare sectors. To learn more, visit drinkpath.com or follow them on Instagram @pathwater. Now, let's jump back into the episode. I think it's like I said, there's so many different moving parts to insurance. Peter and I used to always say, like, the more I would go to these conferences, the less I would know, right? I would literally walk away understanding less than what I knew before because there's just so many different parts. But what I think would be very productive, Peter, I'll hand this one off to you. Do you want to just explain how the lead gen ecosystem, or I would say the insurance marketplace, works when someone is shopping for insurance, and then how they would get contacted by these guys' agents, or how that process works? Because I think people just don't know, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So I would say, right, this is digital advertising. And what happens is you have insurance agents that frankly can't compete with large national brands in a digital marketing ecosystem, right? Think about this. If you owned a local grocery store and you wanted to advertise to get more people in your grocery store, you could simply, do a variety of things online to make your online presence better, right? Because there's only a few other grocery stores probably nearby. In the world of insurance, digital marketing, if you're an insurance agent and you want to grow your agency and make the phones ring, and you try and do that digital marketing on your own, you will never beat the search engine optimization and the advertising budgets of Geico, Progressive, State Farm, Liberty Mutual, and a bunch of other companies, right? I think that if you look at Allstate, Progressive, Geico, Liberty Mutual, and State Farm, you have 5 players that spend about $1 billion in advertising annually. All right, $1 billion among those companies that they're spending. How is any insurance agent going to compete with that? So what happens is you have people, digital marketers that own websites like, insurance.com or autoinsurance.net or whatever they are, that allow these agents to really scale their advertising ability and budgets together to do the same kind of outreach that the large brands are doing. So when consumers go and they search for I need auto insurance in Texas, right? Sure, yeah, of course, Allstate will come up and Geico will come up and these other places, but these comparative marketing, these comparison shopping websites will come up too, where it's like, we will get you, the best rate from a certain number of carriers, and consumers will fill out their personal information on that site. That information will get sold, to a what we would generally call an aggregator or a network or a marketplace of insurance agents, right? Like Lead Clinic, and then we will distribute that consumer information to one of our clients. One of our clients, maybe one of you guys, right, will get that consumer information and will outreach that consumer with a phone call to talk to them and sell them an insurance policy. So in essence, what I like to really compare lead gen to is, right, just it's a collective of insurance agencies that are pooling their marketing resources together to compete in an ecosystem that they wouldn't be able to do that, by themselves, just because if you have a company that's got $1 billion marketing budget, what are they going to pay for Google AdWords? Can you really compete with them? No, you're going to go out of business pretty quick. So pooling those resources together is what really the lead gen system is about. And it tends to work really well in systems where there's a lot of consumers looking for the same product, and that there is a margin in that product to support the advertising expense. Like, you don't see lead gen for like grocery store customers because they don't need that, right? They can do it themselves.
Right.
So
what from your guys' viewpoint, obviously, I wanted him to explain that because that's a way agents scale their businesses by buying leads. But what other ways can agency owners scale their business? And do you guys do those? What do you guys do?
I'm sure you've done everything from the. I want to hear your perspective on this, and I'll jump in and kind of give mine as well.
Yeah, so this is what I think makes some of our small businesses so unique, is that there's not a right way to do it. You have to find the way that is most comfortable for you. And this conference that we're at this week and the conference we were at last week are the most successful agents in the country.
Yeah.
And none of us are doing exactly the same thing. What I think is really cool, and some of the other sources that I've used is, Derrek said this, we want to do business with people that we know. Building your network of referral partners, things that work really well in our industry are mortgage brokers, realtors, those kind of people that are selling products that we can insure.
Yeah, that they need to have insured too.
Right, exactly. And so, building that is a huge thing. And the best part about that is you're typically the only insurance agent that they're talking to, or maybe only one of two. And so it's not as much about price as it is about relationship in those environments. What's crazy is it's 2024. Sending mail actually still works. Sending postcards to people's houses still works. People still look at that and call your office. So there's a variety of different ways. One of my best friends, Christina Shaw, does all of her marketing on social media. She gets all of her business from Instagram, Facebook, does a fantastic job in that space. So there isn't a right way to do it. You can do it however you want, but lead gen is a huge part of that, and really allows for, especially if you've got teams like Derrek and ours, you got to feed your consumer, or you got to feed your producers, 100%. And the only way you can feed them consistently is with lead gen like that.
It's been that same way. I mean, we all have our path, but I think when it comes to growing your business to scale, you've got to start with a plan, go all in on it. Don't dabble in a whole bunch of stuff. Really drive in just one area, an area that you're interested in, maybe 2 areas, whatever it is, but go all in on that. Have a plan, hold yourself accountable to it. I think you'll get good results, and you'll start to see what's working and what's not. I mean, and it could be a number of the verticals that Chris just mentioned, but for me, it's always been lead aggregation. I was in banking and finance for 10 years, had to buy my own leads. Nobody gave them to me. I had to buy them myself.
Yeah.
And so I got in the lead game back in 2004, and I fed myself and did very well for 10 years. So I took a special appreciation, but I also had some empathy there. I was like, man, I don't want to do that to people. I actually want to, let them focus on selling and not have to create a P&L or a balance sheet to, manage their own entrepreneur business within my own. So I took a little bit different of approach, but I think for me, that's where it was lead aggregation, and just fell in love with it. Fell in love with data. There's so many parts of insurance. Insurance might not seem sexy on its face, but because it's a business that touches every aspect of business, you're going to find something that you can fall in love with. And for me, it's marketing. I'm passionate about it. Chris will tell you, like I literally will meet with agents, give the time away for free. That's how passionate I am about it, and just want them to do better.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of what you guys said there that I wanted everyone to hear, is that there's multiple ways to grow and scale, and some of them are old school, some of them are buying leads and using new technology to contact the consumer. Chris and Derrek, whoever wants to answer this, feel free. What is 1 or 2 things that you guys think Allstate can do better at?
It's a great question. Yeah, I think for me it's 2 things. 1, they have to give us better tools. Most of the stuff.
Us, and sorry to interrupt. Us meaning the agents.
Agents, yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. They have to give agents and our producers better tools. The best stuff that Derrek and I use, we have to go out and find. And I feel like Allstate could do a much better job of giving us better tools to analyze our businesses and help to really scale. So that's number 1. Number 2, I think, is, and this is something that has gotten a lot better in the 3-4 years that Derrek and I have been on the councils, but it has to be a partnership between the company and agents. They can't see us as just sales producers out in the field selling the Allstate product. They have to see us as small business owners, and they have to understand that in such a dynamic marketplace that we're in, they can't keep changing things all the time.
Yeah.
They have to give us a path forward that we can really get comfortable with a 12-month business plan, a 3-year business plan, a 5-month business plan. So to me, those are the 2 big things they can do for agency owners. On the consumer side, I think the number 1 thing that Allstate has to do better is they have to get to a place where we have all these ideas about this great technology, but I still have customers that call my office every day and say, I can't log into my app. Mm-hmm. And
you think that's consumer error, though, or user error?
I mean, it is partly, I'm sure. And every time iOS updates, they it messes up the app and they have to redo it. So I definitely think it's there, but I think that we have to make it a lot simpler to start out with before we can really advance it.
Yeah, I think Allstate's heading this direction, but we talked about this earlier. It's widening our net to bring in more consumers of all demographics across the nation, and also the way that we communicate these things. The way that we're advertising, I think we had hit on that earlier, just about some of the claims-related things that we're doing, just about, what we do. You hit on pet insurance, just more advertisement that's going to hit a person where they are, really, I think is mission critical. And he hit a lot of the ones that I was thinking of earlier, but I think Allstate's really doing a great job of moving forward. A lot of companies that have been around for nearly 100 years aren't thinking this way.
And I think a couple of things. The first thing is that I think you're right. The consumer experience from, I think, any carrier standpoint can be exceptionally better. I think what people need to understand, and again, bringing that consumer aspect to the table, mixing it with my insurance and lead gen knowledge, there are so many layers to the insurance business. However, again, if anyone from the Allstate executive team is listening to this, I think they need to care more about their agents. That's like the word on the street. Like, us talking to agents, being out to dinner last night with some of the top producing agents and hearing the frustrations that they have with the inability to write insurance, grow their own business, which inevitably means growing Allstate's business as well, is they need to treat you guys better, in my opinion, right? I think they need to give you, sure, we can talk about technology and tools that they should give you access to, but I think the rapid changing of things is hurting the ecosystem for consumers. Of course, it's hurting your guys' business as well because your goals are always shifting. What you want to do is always changing. But the consumer aspect is getting interrupted by that. But then as a business owner, and all of us are, we always go back to, well, the bottom line, right? We need to make money. Right. And how do you make money if you're writing policies and then there's claims and then you're paying out the claims and it's this round robin effect? So I think it's really important to understand that we could sit here for 10 hours, all of us, and talk about these issues and not scratch the surface at all about what the issue is and what the solution could be. Peter, what is your opinion on that?
So I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, which I don't often do. But I think that we have to remember, right, Allstate's a publicly traded company. And what large investors in Allstate choose to care about on any particular day could be something that none of us are thinking about. And, you know, when we look at a lot of the metrics that Allstate holds agents accountable to, that's because that ties into other metrics that other analysts that work, you know, at institutional investing firms look at to compare Allstate to its peers, to try and reverse the math to figure out how much money they're going to make, to see, should we invest more money in capital in Allstate or should we pull back? So I think that we have to look at it, and I think that one thing I always like to do is I like to look at things from the other person's perspective. And I think that agents aren't really good at this sometimes, of looking at what Allstate corporate has to do, the balancing act they have to play in, just because like some analyst somewhere wants to thinks that, you know, this is, you know, part of the equation that's going to make the company more or less profitable. And then, you know, the management of Allstate has to look at that and then, you know, financially incentivize agents to bundle policies or do other things, right? Because traditionally you're going to make less margin on an auto policy than a home policy, so we want the property policy as well. And so I think that agents need to do a better job of trying to think they're not just doing this because they just said today, okay, we want to make everyone's life miserable today, right? There's some reason that it happens, but I think in most things, communication is key, and I think that sometimes the communication isn't always there in my experience as a former Allstate agent, and I think that many agents probably say that today, but I think that agents that understand that this is a business and that Allstate's got to do and it's a competitive business, right? I mean, there's a lot of large players in it. There are a lot of consumers too, but to look at it and say they have to run the business like a business, and this isn't just someone just saying we have to do this because there is rationale behind it, and right, sometimes they can't talk about what that rationale is, right? Right, it's a publicly traded company, and there's certain things that they're not going to want to divulge to keep a competitive advantage against their peers in you know, the carrier marketplace. So I think that more communication is good, and we're here at an event where many of the largest Allstate agents in the country are here, and I think that there's a lot of good communication that goes on at these forums and events, and I think that everyone needs to keep an open mind to things and understand that change is necessary. Change is necessary for the evolution of the company to continue, right? Yeah. How many massive, you know, great American companies, you know, just go extinct, right? Because someone else comes in and disrupts. And so you're playing this balancing act of defense and offense at the same time. In the same game, you are executing both of those strategies, right? Yeah. At the same time. This isn't a football game where offense goes on and then defense goes on, right? It is you're protecting what they've built, and that's hard to do when you have disruptors come into the marketplace, right? So I think I'll just come back to this again. I know I've said it a few times here, but I think that communication on both ends could be better,
100%.
and that if there's something that doesn't make sense from an agent's perspective of why is this part of our comp plan changing, and why is this happening, or why can't we write insurance policies here? Just ask the questions, but then remember that these are really smart people. And we know that they're really smart people because large institutional investors that are very sophisticated are dumping a lot of capital here. So it's not, these guys, they know what they're doing. They know how to run a business. Sometimes it might not seem like it from an agent's perspective. But I would always tell an agent to say, just look back and say, there's a reason they're doing this. It might not be clear to you right now, but like nobody just woke up and said, "Hey, want to make Derrek's life miserable today," and so we're gonna increase rates by 20% in the cities that he has most of his policies saturated. And like no one's doing anything like that. So look at it from both sides. So and it's not often that I give I'm defending corporate America, but I guess.
But it's an important viewpoint because, like I said, at the end of the day, we're all business owners, so we all understand that hard decision that we have to make, and that brings me perfectly into my two next points. Is first, you talk about increase in pricing, and let's talk about the inability to have any coverage anymore. Getting these letters in the mail that says, "Hey, in 90 days, we're no longer going to cover you. You need to go out and find new insurance." And what does that do? It causes a panic, and it causes a distaste in the consumer's mouth, right? So I think there's, again, talking about solutions, what would you guys say could be the solutions for those two examples, right? Because we know that the prices are going to have to go up just based upon what's going on. There's no way to go around that, but can the delivery of the message be any better? And then I think too, like the number one thing I hear all the time, especially living in Florida, is I just got this letter in the mail. I'm no longer going to be insured anymore. What the hell do I do?
I can talk on the side regarding I guess, more of a opportunity to lobby our state departments of insurance. A lot of folks don't realize that they're the ones that allow us and disallow us to be able to raise rates when needed. And when we're not able to do that at a consistent level, then you're going to get these massive increases because it's all about us being able to pay our promises to you guys. So when we can't do that, or when there's too much catastrophe out there, natural disasters and things that we didn't reserve for, then what's going to happen is disruption in that marketplace, and now the consumer is going to feel it. So depending on what state you're located in, you're going to see that you're going to feel that pain a little bit more than others. And for us, I believe it starts there. We've got to be able to work with these departments of insurance in a way that's going to be beneficial for the consumer, so they're not feeling it, so they're not getting non-renewed because no one wants to provide insurance in that state because the state moves so slow to allow us to keep up with staying profitable at a state level, not at a national level. Everyone thinks everything's done at a national level. It's done at a state level.
Yep.
So if one state's not profitable, even the state legislators are thinking we're all pulling monies in from one state to another to fund this state. That's not how it works.
No.
It's that state and the amount of reserves that state, the amount of business that state brings in for that company, for that carrier, and that's going to determine if they're able to continue to do business in that state and at an affordable price.
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that the insurance regulators in certain states are not allowing small increases in prices, and therefore it's causing almost like a bottleneck of you guys are pushing for more, and then it's like, we're going to pull from here, or you guys either increase the price, or is that?
That's what he's saying. I have a little different perspective that I think, and I've said this on different podcasts before, and it's something that I'll stand by forever. The reason that it's happened in recent years is because the insurance industry didn't do enough of the right thing during COVID.
Yep. Oh,
And
you're spot on.
They are getting what they got because of what they did.
You're talking in general?
Taking profits.
Let's talk
Yeah, I mean, you saw. All right, so like we saw years of our lives, or part of a year of our life, where everyone was basically locked in their house. No one was driving. Everyone was home, so they would detect a leak, right? Your house isn't going to burn down to the ground if you're there and you see a small kitchen fire versus, if nobody's home and it's an electrical fire comes out. So it's there were record profits in a year where everyone's life was the shittiest it's ever been. People were locked in their houses. We had mental health crisis exasperated at a crazy rate, and insurance carriers took record profits. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, because most of these companies are publicly traded, right? Which means that, you know, when the rest of the stock market was completely in the tank, right, there were dividends paid to teachers' pension funds and firefighters' funds and all these institutional investors that put capital into companies like Allstate. But I think that companies, and I'm not speaking specific to Allstate, I'm speaking industry specific right now, I think the insurance carriers didn't give enough money back, and they should not have ever allowed a year when everyone's life was completely shit to be their record profit years. And I think that some regulators realized that, and they couldn't say, hang on, you're making too much money, because they had already approved the rates, right? Now, in some states, they did say, you better start giving money back or we're going to start reassessing this stuff. And many companies did. And let's talk about Allstate was the leader and the first one to issue money back.
Yep.
The very first. And they did the right thing, no doubt.
Is issuing money back mean actually giving the dollars back?
Yeah, they did, because
Okay.
they're like, no one's driving. Like, we're collecting all this premium and we don't have to pay claims because no one's on the road. We need to like actually start giving money back. And they put money back in people's bank accounts, which was at a perfect time because people were not working, right? I mean,
Is there any other time in history where that's happened in recent time?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think it's ever
That's
happened.
crazy.
And it may never happen again. Like, you know, I mean, like, I hope it never happens again.
Yeah,
I don't want- like, we don't want another global pandemic. I mean, it'll probably happen, like, based on science, but, like, this has never happened in, like, a modern
Very
insurance
interesting.
ecosystem. But I don't think anyone gave enough money back. And then the regulators did exactly what I would do, right? Because, like, sometimes, like, I have a long memory. And I'm going to be like, all right, you didn't, you know, you took record profits. You didn't give very much money back to your customers. And now you're not making much money. Well, offset that by the record profits you made in 2020 and 2021. And you're about even now. So I don't think you need a rate increase. So that's what I would do as a regulator.
Yeah.
And I think that caught up with them. And now, you know, right? But these companies are publicly traded. So what the earnings were in 2020 and 2021, no one cares about anymore. They want to know what their next, you know, is Allstate still going to pay its normal dividend or not, right? And so I think that's really how, in my mind, we got to where we are now. Not because regulators just wanted to be difficult for the sake of being difficult. But
I think it's also, no one could forecast the impacts from an inflationary standpoint of
True.
how drastic that would
Good
be.
point. Yeah.
And so that in play with what happened in COVID, you're spot on. There was some greed going around there during that time. And thank God some carriers did the right thing. Was it enough? Maybe not. But I think no one could forecast the impact. No one could know if it was going to be a bullwhip or a U-shaped recovery instead of a V, or, you know, however it was going to turn around.
And most of the time they can, right? Most of the time we can model
Yes,
for these things and know what's going to happen.
Yes.
But in once in a lifetime situations, you can't model for it.
I mean,
so it's hard, you know, it is hard for us to sit here and say, well, they should have done this, they should have done that. I mean, of course, it's easy for me to say that because I wasn't making the decisions at the time, and I now have all the information. So I can look like a genius, right? And say, you know, they deserve what they're getting now, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it is hard to model, to your point.
Yeah.
It's impossible to model something that's never happened before.
this is a big shit sandwich, and everyone took a bite.
Really? Yep.
Yeah. Chris, what is your view on that, being in the position you're in, talking to the executive team at Allstate?
Yeah, so I think really good points all around. I think that, you know, from my perspective and the conversations that I've had, I think that really what Allstate has now tried to do is stabilize as much as possible. We want to get back to the point. I mean, let's face it, like, insurance prices are probably not going down again. I talk to customers all the time, like, my car's getting older. Why isn't the have you been to a body shop recently? Like, our insurance prices are not going down, but what we would like to get to a point is where they're not going up double digits every year like we've been in, and really kind of stabilize that. And I think that especially if you use like our state as an example, Allstate had to take a big bite rate-wise just to get to a point where we were rate neutral, not even making any money, just neutral. because we've had unprecedented winter storms. We've had unprecedented hurricane seasons. We've had this stuff that, to your point, we can model a certain way, but we can't model for the weather changes that we're experiencing. And so not only do we have to get rate neutral, but we got to get to a better spot. But back to your original question, I'll use what Allstate's doing right now in our commercial space. And I think they're doing the absolute best thing they can for us as agency owners and for our customers. The amount, so Allstate's kind of basically getting out of the commercial business, but what they're doing is they're giving the customer a credible amount of time notification. Like, I've got customers renewing in May of 25 that have already gotten notices like, hey, we're not going to be renewing your policy, but here are some options.
I think that's great, yeah.
And they're giving us options. So they brought in carrier, like we brought in Next as a carrier. We brought in some of these outside companies to, you were talking about Haggerty earlier, like, don't reinvent the wheel. We've got companies that do this exceptionally well. Yeah. Give us the platform, give our customers options, give us enough time that we can talk through the options there. Don't say legally we have to tell them 60 days prior to renewal, so we're going to do it on day 61. Like, give the customer time, give the agencies time, and give us the tools that we can give our customers options. There are a lot of ways you can say no, and if you do it in the right way, it's a totally different experience.
It matters how you say no.
I would say this too, right? What he talked about with the notifications, the early notifications, the commercial insurance space is significantly less regulated, in my opinion, than the personal lines insurance space, for a variety of reasons. But I think in the example you gave, where like Florida and stuff like that, it may not be the carrier wants to just do 61-day notice because that's their legal requirement, is that the Department of Insurance may not approve them to non-renew those policies until the last minute, or until, frankly, the carrier wanted to non-renew them a year ago, but now they, this is the earliest opportunity under the regulation. You have to remember, when you get the government involved with stuff, like, logic sometimes goes out the window. And so we have to remember that this is such a hugely regulated industry that sometimes carriers want to do a better thing to a consumer, but the agency that's supposed to be like the consumer protection agency is overloaded and overwhelmed and underfunded, and only has so many analysts and can only get through so many rate filings and regulatory filings. So I do think that we have to remember that is a possible reason in some of these instances too.
I want to take a pause to kind of tie the 2 points together.
Yeah.
Rate increases and the non-renewals. And from our expert here, I want him to explain what happens, the cause and effect between not having enough rate, and meaning rate increases, and then these non-renewals, meaning carriers pulling out.
Please.
Can you give
So, not to get too far into the weeds, but there's there is a thought around what's called reserves, and every state is a little bit different, and it depends on your product portfolio, but every insurance company has to keep a certain number of dollars in reserve, that if we have a massive catastrophe that, we have to be able to pay every dollar that we've promised to the consumer. So, and it's actually a plus. So, like, just as an example, on a homeowner's policy, if it's $1,000 policy for the year, the insurance company has to keep like 125% of that. If we're going to pay out on a $500,000 house, we've got to have $600,000 in reserves to be able to do that. So we have to have enough money in our coffers, if you will, to be able to pay those out on large scale. So when Allstate is looking at, hey, we need to take, they talk about indicated rate. We've got a lot of smart people that will say, based on the last 15 years and what we're expecting in the next 5, here's how much we're going to pay out in claims. We need to make sure that the money that we're bringing in is enough to cover that. So to Derrek's point, you've got certain states across the country, I'll use California as an example. They would only allow for like 6.9% rate increase when most companies needed 40, 50, 60%. Well, now they're at a point where the company's just like, forget it. I can't get enough money in to keep my reserve where it needs to be, so I'm going to not only stop offering new policies, but I'm going to non-renew a certain amount or all that I have on the books because I can't keep that money in place. And Allstate is always going to be very conservative with that. We are a publicly traded company, and we've paid a dividend, I think, every single chance we've gotten, which is really nice. And so I think that to Derek's point, I have insurance. I have Allstate insurance. I don't like when my homeowner's policy goes up 50%.
Yeah.
But I would rather be able to call my agent and say, okay, maybe I can make a deductible change here, or maybe I can change this coverage, or I can, bundle my cars now, or something like that to offset some of that increase than a fire sale trying to find the only company that will offer me something. May not even be great coverage. I don't have an agent that I can talk to. I may have to go to the state coverage, which we really don't want to have to do that. So don't necessarily look at a rate increase as a bad thing, especially in the market that we're at right now. It's an option to continue to work with the agent that you've built this relationship with.
And less carriers means your prices are going to go up. And so if there's carriers that can't write in specific states, that is detrimental to you. And we're not talking small price increases. I mean, we were looking at properties that were similar in size in Texas where you might be paying $200 for a $250,000 home. Let's call it $2,500, right, a year. And that same home in Florida, regardless of the carrier, you're paying what? 15 grand a year, 20 grand because of the less availability of options and carriers. And of course, because they have to, once again, cover the reserves, less reserves, still got the same amount of people. There's an issue here.
Yeah, and this right here is what the consumers need to understand. When I talk about the education and people need to understand why the prices are going up, this right here, this 5 to 7 minutes that you guys have been talking, is probably the most valuable thing to be able to take away from the conversation, to understand the relationship between the two, to understand when you get the letter in the mail, either no policy moving forward or price increase, to be able to understand that and not have the reactive emotional response to it, and instead have a logical response to it. Instead of going and shopping, maybe I'm picking up the phone and calling my agent. But wrapping the interview up and this conversation up, I want to end the way I always do, and I'll let you guys all talk. And I ask this question to everyone that comes on the show. So Derrek, we'll start with Peter in the beginning. We'll start with you and go back around at the end. What do you wish you knew when you were in your early 20s?
Wow, what a great question. And for me, it's I wish that I would have slowed down enough to actually, listen to a lot of the wisdom that was being thrown my way, and really just be with it. And then I also wish I would have slowed down. I've always been a go-getter. It's just in my DNA. My father also came from the insurance world, so for me, I just wanted to jump into the work world. I wanted to just do well and all these things, but I wish I would have just slowed down. I wish I would have took a little time to really find that overall purpose and run with it. Because you're young, you think money's a purpose. No, that's an outcome. You develop purpose with experience. So if I would have loved to have done some, a little bit of traveling, or, got involved in the community more, just really took some time to really get to know myself and figure out what I wanted to do.
I love that.
That's what I would have done.
I love that. Chris?
Yeah, so similar to Derrek, I would say, when I first started, I started my scratch agency when I was 28. I'd already been in the industry for a while, but I thought I knew everything. I thought, man, this is going to be easy. I have all these great ideas. And, what was it Mike Tyson said? You have a great plan. Everyone has a great plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Starting a business from scratch is, in my opinion, probably the hardest thing that you could ever do in this life. And I wish that I had given myself some grace at that time. I think for the first 2 or 3 years, I felt like a failure. I was like, man, this is not happening as fast as I thought. I thought this was going to be amazing. And I wish I had given myself some more grace and really leaned on people like Derrek, and had the humbleness within me to say, I need help. I need your help. I don't know what I'm doing. Please, give me your wisdom. And if I had done that at 28 instead of 35, then I'd be in a different conversation right now.
I love that one too.
I would say patience. I think that, we talked on this earlier. I think that enough young people are not patient today. And if you're patient and you drive value for other people in whatever you're doing, you're going to be massively successful. So I think be patient, focus on, just have methodical focus and just focus, be patient, build things and products and ideas that have value for other people, and network.
Yeah.
Like network, there's so many people that can help you, and just by someone else they know, that may be the key thing into something that you're working on. So be patient and network.
I love that. And gentlemen, I will say for my last words is I want to thank you all for coming on here, for the audience to understand the position you guys are in, the power you guys hold at such a massive household name, and to come on here and have an open, transparent conversation where, again, for everyone listening, there is no script. There is no topic sent before. This is, we get in here and we just get down to it, and have a real conversation that we would have if we were all sitting at dinner or at lunch with no cameras, no lights, no microphones. And again, we all bring something valuable to the table. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for your commitment to make this community and industry a better one. I think there's people out there, like I said earlier, that don't have the drive or the kindness or caring inside of them to actually leave a positive impact. They care about the dollar signs. And I think, unless you guys are very good actors, I think you really do care, and you take the time to volunteer, because they are volunteer positions on the board, right? So as busy as you guys are, you volunteer in these positions. And I think it's very powerful to hear the messages you guys are delivering to the audience. And especially for someone like myself, where, sure, do I understand insurance and I understand the aspect of how lead generation ties into it? Absolutely. But do I understand when you talk about going into the weeds? Absolutely not. That's where I do the phone a friend and call Peter. And I'm like, Peter, what do we do here? You know, but seriously, I thank you guys for this. I thank you for coming on. And I always say, everyone that comes on the show is very busy during the day. So to take, I think we've been on for somewhere in the ballpark of 2 hours-ish, to take 2 hours out of your day during the week and come and talk with no phones, no distractions. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. So thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.